I'd like to open this particular discussion with US-China relations as per se, because the entire world is kind of revolving in the middle of these two giants having a battle. Where and how do you see this relationship going forward?
Adi, let me start with a little bit on Soviet-Russia-China relation, because that has a direct bearing in what is happening to US-China relations. The complex geopolitics of the world has been reshaping nearly every 2 decades. So Russia and China are two giant neighbors that occupy the largest mass of Asia. They have over 4,000 kilometers of border between them. Traditionally, they have been antagonistic societies, but often chose the marriage of convenience. Their relations in post-World War II era have been vacillating between two extremes. Currently, they are close. They are unequal. Their relationship is unreal, if I may say, and it is complex. Now, during the peak of communism, Mao was very unhappy, especially after Stalin went. That means Khrushchev took over, about Soviets being soft on communism. Now, Russia's stand on India also accelerated the split between these two countries. There were also serious differences between these two countries on Vietnam and later on in Afghanistan. But after the breakup of the Soviet Union and now more powerful China decided to close in, because now when China realized that the actual competitor is USA, they decided to close in with Russia, mainly to exploit their arms technology and natural resources. So China needs Russian hydrocarbons for the moment. Russia is important for China's Silk Route projects in Central Asia and to Europe. Russia and China are buddies with the strategic treaties. Also, they are coordinating with each other in the world bodies like the United Nations, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, BRICS, and Russia, India, China groupings. Putin and Xi Jinping are both authoritarian leaders. We will talk a little more about what will be the future state of relationships. And I come to your question now about the China-US relations. USA did not formally recognize People's Republic of China for a very long time. Nearly 30 years after founding, it had not recognized it. Instead, the US maintained diplomatic relations with Taiwan. US fought China and Soviet Union together in 1950 Korean War. It ended as a stalemate. It worsened US-China relations for times to come, the Korean War. China also supported Vietnam against USA in Vietnam War. And when China became nuclear armed, and that puts limits on the USA, till 1971, US-China relations were uniformly hostile, if I may use that word. USA always was clear that China was more militant and more dangerous than Soviet Union. Seeing the China-Soviet split, and also when China realized after USA left Vietnam that USA was more worried about Soviets, so then they made attempts to get closer to the US, and then came the ping pong diplomacy. We all are aware of how in 1972 Nixon visited China. USA acknowledged that there is only one China, and that Taiwan is part of that China. And this is at the peak of their good relations as they were evolving. But in many issues like Korea, Vietnam, Israel, USA and China were unable to reach a common understanding. Now, USA-China military cooperation began in 1979. Americans' arms sales were allowed to Chinese. US changed its classification of China to a friendly developing nation, thereby increasing the amount of technology that and armaments they could be sold. Chinese demands for advanced technology from US were not always met, though, because the US didn't want to open all its cards. But it was Reagan who was the first president who, in his initial years of office, saw deterioration started between US and China relations due to the president's vociferous anti-communism views. Also, there were differences of opinion between the two in Israel-Palestine conflict, also in Falkland Wars. We know even today the Chinese are talking about Argentina should own Falkland Islands. The differences increased after the suppression of the in the Tiananmen protests. A lot of trade restrictions were imposed, and Washington started supporting Taiwan, including with arms. By the turn of this century, it was becoming very clear that China was becoming big economically and militarily. China was also upset that Obama had chosen to have Asia Pacific defense strategy, which later on it became Indo-Pacific strategy. Also, around that time during Obama's tenure, Quad was conceived and has become big today. America started viewing India the only big power in Asia that can actually stand up to China, and knowing fully well that India and China have had boundary disputes, so the Americans started befriending India. China, ever since Xi has come up and become all powerful, has been dismissive of American complaints about the cyber security and other issues. But China's claims in South China Sea and rapid island building brought to open the Chinese expansionist plans as American friends in the region were looking for leads from Washington. So that is a time where the relationship has sort of started deteriorating one hell of a lot. And I must tell you that the world is extremely concerned about Belt and Road Initiative. Now, Trump came down more heavily with punitive tariffs. Luckily, Biden is following up with no less, emphasis and gusto. The eager human rights issues in Xinjiang are being talked of by everybody in the world, including many European countries have started talking about it. The autocratic, totalitarian, communist, closed China has been seen as a threat to free world and democratic system of the world. Now, this is very important, and America has for some time been treating the world as unipolar and looking at Asia as multipolar. But China wants the world to be multipolar and Asia to be unipolar, and that is the grand strategy that is evolving between the two sides. China is today fast catching up with America in air and space and maritime, becoming a maritime power, though it is still far behind USA. Remember, the Chinese are still rolling out their second aircraft carrier. The Americans have 12 of them. Currently, at least 2 of them are in the region very close to China. Also, Chinese are becoming leaders in cyber, hypersonics, unmanned systems, some other technologies. So this issue between China and US and the world that is going to follow the US way of thinking is going to carry on for some time. Yes.